Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching your evening operational briefing for March 28, 2026. And tonight's edition covers a day on which several separate crises converged at once. On the ground in Ukraine, the battle for Lyman has entered its final stage. Russian forces have cut key supply routes into the city through Brusivka, and confirmed urban advances inside Lyman are now on the map. We will break down what this means for the broader approach to Sloviansk. In the skies, the fuel war is escalating on both sides. Ukraine hitting refineries as far as Yaroslavl, Russia systematically destroying diesel locomotives across the Ukrainian rail network. The logic behind both campaigns and why it matters for the spring offensive season. And in the Middle East, Yemen has officially entered the war on Iran's side. Two strategic maritime choke points, Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb, are now simultaneously blocked. Oil closes the week at just under $100. Monday's market open will be telling. Let us get into it. March 28, 2026 can, with reasonable confidence, be marked as the entry point into the decisive phase of the conflict. The next 5 months, the spring and summer military campaigns, will determine the operational balance on both theaters of war and set the framework for any subsequent political processes. Both sides understand this, and it is precisely this that explains the mounting intensity of operations across all directions simultaneously. Mutual infrastructure strikes. The fuel war. In the night of March 28th, the Ukrainian side conducted another large-scale strike against Russian territory using between 200 and 250 drones. The Russian Ministry of Defense indirectly confirmed the scale of the attack, reporting the interception of 155 drones between 23 Samant and 07 Sashan. The strike was structured in several waves. One directed toward Leningrad Oblast was stopped in the Smolensk Oblast area. Part of the drones attempted to bypass Moscow from both east and west. Two waves moved toward the southern regions and the Black Sea. One wave headed toward central Russia. The most significant episode was the appearance of drones in the Yaroslavl area. The presumed target is the Yaroslavl oil refinery in the southwestern part of the city. The significance of this strike goes beyond the specific facility. Yaroslavl is located beyond Moscow, relative to Ukrainian territory, indicating that the Russian capital is not a priority target for the Ukrainian side. The priority is exclusively fuel and energy infrastructure. Drones were also recorded in the Chapayevsk area, with reports of a strike against a chemical plant. The logic of this campaign is transparent and warrants separate analysis. Fuel is one of the key resources of any military campaign. Without it, both offensive operations and logistics grind to a halt. The Ukrainian side has lost the ability to produce fuel independently. All major oil refining facilities in the country, including the largest Kremenchuk plant, were destroyed in the course of combat operations. Ukraine is forced to import fuel. The Russian side, in turn, is a natural producer and exporter of oil. Completely stopping Russian oil refining through drone strikes is not realistic, but creating a systemic crisis and disrupting supply chains is an achievable objective. This is precisely why the Russian side, understanding Ukraine's dependence on imported fuel, has concentrated its efforts on two interconnected directions: the destruction of traction substations that power electrified railway sections and the systematic destruction of diesel locomotives, the only alternative when electric traction is put out of action. Over the past week, dozens of video materials documenting strikes against Ukraine's locomotive fleet have been published. In the Kryvyi area alone, several locomotives were destroyed or damaged over a few days. Fresh footage from Znamyanka documents yet another locomotive strike. The logistics hub forming around Odessa, Kryvyi and Dnipropetrovsk Oblast, the key route for transferring weapons and fuel to Ukrainian armed forces, is under systematic attack. In the reciprocal night from March 27 to 28, the Russian side deployed 273 drones for strikes against Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Primary directions: Odessa, Zaparisia, Dnipropetrovsk, and Poltava Oblasts. In Poltava Oblast, strikes targeted gas extraction and gas processing facilities. A railway train stoppage was recorded, presumably due to power supply disruption. Russia's introduction of fuel export restrictions from April 1 to July 31 2026, warrants separate attention. The official motivation is seasonal demand during the spring sowing campaign. However, a strategic component cannot be excluded: building reserves to sustain the spring-summer military campaign. Both explanations are mutually consistent. The line of contact. Ukraine, Zaparisia direction. On the Orikhiv sector, Russian reconnaissance and sabotage groups continue to filter toward Orikhiv from the direction of Stepnohirsk and Novoyakivlivka. The distance from the forward positions of infiltration groups to the Orikhiv agglomeration is now no more than 15 kilometers. Aviation strikes against Orikhiv itself have intensified and continue to increase in frequency. West of the Haichur River and Huliapole, in the Voskresenivka area, Russian forces are also building up their presence with infiltration zone corrections. The Ukrainian side continues its counter-offensive toward Uspanivka, but the tempo of this advance is steadily declining as it approaches the main Russian defensive line Huliapole, Uspanivka, Velika Novosilka. In February, map corrections were arriving regularly. Now their frequency has dropped sharply. A number of analysts link the intensification of mobilization measures in Ukraine directly to the losses sustained during the Zaporizhzhia counter-offensive. Dobropilia direction. A significant volume of video materials documenting strikes against Ukrainian forward positions is being published. The Russian army is actively pressing on this sector. No cartographic changes have been recorded over the past 24 hours. Costantineka direction. The Russian army continues offensive operations with the use of aerial bombs and TOS-Sonsepek thermobaric systems. No cartographic changes over the past 24 hours. That said, the systematic use of TOS systems indicates preparation for an assault against Ukrainian fortified positions in residential districts. Sloviansk direction. Brusivka and Lyman, a strategic shift. On the Sloviansk direction, an event occurred today that must be highlighted separately. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed from the morning hours a substantial advance by Russian units in the area of Brusivka, a settlement located on the Russian bank of the Siversky Donets, effectively at the beginning of the Sloviansk agglomeration. The operational significance of this advance should be understood primarily not through the lens of the battle for Sloviansk, but through the lens of the battle for Lyman. By taking Brusivka under control, Russian forces have gained physical access to several key logistics arteries that until this point had been used by the Ukrainian side to supply its contingent in Lyman. Part of these routes is now inaccessible to Ukrainian units in the city. This is a fundamental shift. Lyman had already been under pressure: aviation strikes, artillery, FPV drones. But now logistical strangulation has been added to fire pressure. Ukrainian forces in Lyman are receiving supplies through a narrowing corridor. Simultaneously, footage has been received confirming a Russian advance in the southeastern part of Lyman itself. Strikes against Russian forward positions already within the city boundary have been documented in precisely this sector. The totality of these factors allows a clear conclusion. The final stage of the battle for Lyman has begun. Russian command has coordinated external logistical pressure through Brusivka with mounting internal pressure directly inside the city. Precisely this combination, supply cutoff plus direct assault, is the classic scheme for compelling a garrison to surrender or destroying it in place. The fighting for Lyman will take on a decisive character in the coming days. The northern sectors of the front, no cartographic changes. The Middle East, coalition expansion. Yemen enters the war. The Middle Eastern Theater on March 28 recorded an event capable of fundamentally altering the operational and economic picture of the conflict. Yemen has officially entered the war on Iran's side. As confirmation of this decision, the Yemeni side conducted a mass ballistic missile strike in the direction of Israel. Simultaneously, strikes against port infrastructure in Oman were recorded in the Salalah area. Yemen's entry into the conflict means the restoration of control over the Bab el-Mandeb Strait and the Red Sea on the Iranian Axis side. That is, the effective blockade of yet another strategic maritime corridor, in addition to the already blockaded Strait of Hormuz. The economic consequences of this decision are difficult to overstate. The Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait are the key route for tanker traffic between the Persian Gulf and Europe, as well as for container shipping from Asia. The simultaneous blockade of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb creates an unprecedented constriction of global maritime trade routes. Oil prices, fertilizer prices, and metal product prices receive a powerful new upward impulse. In parallel, the United States and coalition conducted strikes overnight against Iranian industrial facilities, metal processing, and metallurgical plants not directly connected to energy or military infrastructure. Strikes were also conducted against the Bushehr nuclear power plant. Iran immediately announced a symmetrical response: strikes against analogous metal processing enterprises across the entire Persian Gulf space. The Iranian side published maps designating the targeted facilities and called on civilians to leave the surrounding areas. The oil market. Verbal interventions exhausted. By the close of Friday trading, WTI crude was trading at $99.64 per barrel, effectively returning to the level of the previous Friday. The 10-day extension of the energy ceasefire, announced by the US president immediately before market close, produced no stabilizing effect. The market ignored the statement. This confirms what has been stated in previous briefings. The resource of verbal interventions is completely exhausted. The only instrument capable of genuinely affecting prices is the establishment of physical control over the Strait of Hormuz. From Monday, March 30th, oil will continue moving upward, unless something occurs that radically changes the operational picture. Yemen's entry into the conflict adds another upward factor to this dynamic. The market on Monday will open under conditions of dual maritime blockade, Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb simultaneously. The reaction of prices is predictable. According to available data, Trump is aware of the need to exit the conflict with a declaration of victory, but the instruments for achieving this are becoming fewer with each passing day. A ground operation is assessed to still be some time away. The coalition retains a number of pressure instruments not yet deployed, but the room for maneuver is narrowing daily. March 28th has formed a picture in which several previously separate processes are beginning to coalesce into a single escalation arc. On the Ukrainian theater, the final stage of the battle for Lyman has become a reality. Logistical cutoff through Brusivka combined with confirmed urban advance forms the classic compulsion scheme. On the Zaparisia direction, Russian infiltration continues alongside a simultaneous deceleration of the Ukrainian counteroffensive. The mutual campaign to destroy fuel and railway infrastructure is intensifying on both sides. On the Middle Eastern theater, Yemen's entry into the war represents a qualitative expansion of the conflict. The simultaneous blockade of two strategic straits is forming a new global energy reality. Oil prices will continue rising. Pressure on American political leadership to make a decision on a ground operation will only intensify. Briefing compiled as of the evening of March 28, 2026. The situation on both theaters continues to develop actively.